Greetings and welcome back to Whiskey Uncorked, where today we're going to be doing another whiskey review, this time of a very ubiquitous and famous bottling of Scotch, Ardbeg 10-year-old. So for the last month or so since I started doing these Thursday videos, we've done the Last Drop series, where I take a bottle that has about a pour left in it, I pour it on camera, I give you some tasting notes off the top of my head, give it a score, and just go over my general experience with that bottle from beginning to end. Now, I don't have one of those bottles that's ready quite yet. I have a few lying in wait, so to speak, that probably have a couple drams left in them. So I will definitely continue doing those when those bottles get a little bit lower, which shouldn't be too long from now. But I figured in the absence of one of those, that it would be a good idea to do some more introductory level bottles. Hence the selection for today of Ardbeg 10-year-old, which is one of the most famous, most ubiquitous bottlings of Islay single malt Scotch whiskey there is. Now, Ardbeg is traditionally heavily peated, akin to a number of other distilleries on the island of Islay, similar to Lefroy, Lagavulin, the Port Charlotte brand out of Bruichladdich. And this is a little divisive. Like, some people love this style of whiskey right off the bat. Some people have to learn to love it over time, and others just can't get over that hump. Now, Ardbeg is generally known for kind of an ashy smoke with maybe some smoky meat, smoky pork kind of qualities to it. And so this is a little bit easier if you don't like Lefroy, which is kind of the Band-Aid sort of notes, the medicinal iodine, just medicine cabinet sort of vibe to it. This might be a little bit more up your street, but still it's probably going to be fairly challenging if you just haven't connected with peat whiskey yet. Additionally, this is a bottle that's been reviewed 1,000 times over. The tasting notes are kind of pretty straightforward. I've probably heard people describe this whiskey 100 times. So there's probably going to be some overlap there, but why don't we just get into the nosing and tasting notes and get you a score. So yeah, a really familiar nose. One that's pretty unmistakable if you spend any amount of time around Islay and you've had a number of the different distilleries found there. Most of them have a pretty distinct note, particularly if you're used to nosing peaty whiskeys. You can pretty distinctly tell a difference between all of them. But obviously the first thing that's going to hit your nose is the smokiness. And it is that kind of ashy, drier smoke at campfire that's kind of dying out, alongside a meatiness, right? You're talking like smoked meats. That's a very common note that you'll often hear with Ardbeg and even other Islay distilleries. But I'm talking more of like a honeyed ham, honey glazed ham for me, and with some grilled fruits like grilled pears. There is a sweetness overall. That honeyed from that kind of honeyed ham sort of vibe is there, really kind of helping to support that smokiness, right? It breaks it up from being too overly dense, and it kind of covers up maybe some of the harsher notes. But overall, this is extremely well balanced. It's a very full nose. It's not something that you really have to look for in your glass. It's going to jump right out to meet you. And it is pretty evenly layered, well integrated, and just generally pretty enjoyable, provided you enjoy the peatiness. All right, to the palate. Cheers. So when it first hits your tongue, you're almost kind of surprised because you're getting that sweet honey, some of that kind of those pear notes. It's almost kind of tame. And then as you kind of chew on it, and then when you swallow it, you're just met with that big blast of Islay goodness. Now, throughout the entire experience, there is an oakiness. It's subtle. It's a dry oak. I wouldn't consider it to be bitter. Maybe a little bit, like if you're sensitive to it, maybe it could kind of come off as a bitterness, but it's really just a dry oakiness to me. And there's a ton of that salty maritime notes really kind of hits the palate, in that mid palate once you swallow it. And that's where you're gonna get all the peat qualities, right? Some of that tarry note. Sometimes I kind of think of like a hot asphalt sort of thing. Now, if you've never had a whiskey like this, it doesn't actually taste like a mouthful of tar or asphalt, right? These are kind of subtleties. There's a dirtiness. There's a very kind of phenolic quality from the peat that just kind of gives it that sort of really dark, tarry note. There's no other way to describe it. So into the finish, you're getting a lot of lemon, which is another really common note with Ardbeg 10. So I don't feel too worried about that one. And that saltiness carries through. So salted lemon. And then the peat smoke really kind of, or not the peat smoke, the peat itself kind of comes out a little bit more purely. And you do get a touch of some medicinal type notes. Not nearly like Laphroaig, but you can definitely start to taste just a touch of that kind of Band-Aid. Now, in terms of like mouthfeel, this is not an overly viscous whiskey. Slightly oily, but generally speaking, this is almost bordering on thin, which is accompanied with an overall dryness, right? We're talking that ashy smoke and the dry oak really kind of contributing to a drying sensation almost through the entire experience, outside of that real upfront hit of like honey and pears. So overall, I kind of like that is just something that's going to be a preference thing. For me, it is a slight knock against it. I kind of wish it had a little bit more viscosity. Now, Ardbeg uses these purifiers on their stills. I don't know a lot of details behind them. In fact, one of their special releases is they remove the purifier. I think last year's the heavy vapors. They remove these purifiers, and I didn't try that one because I've kind of checked out of the committee release bottlings over the last couple of years. The last one I have is a Fermutation, and that was the first one I had bought in a number of years prior to that. So yeah, there's a little bit of a thinness here, even despite it being non-chill filtered, but it's kind of replaced with this overall kind of drying quality that is basically just part of the overall Ardbeg experience, at least in my personal opinion. So I think that's kind of the story of Ardbeg 10 in particular, is you're getting some of these kind of contrasting qualities. You're getting nice sweet notes, but drying characteristics. You're getting clean, fresh lemon and salty maritime notes alongside some tarry, ashy, a little bit dirtier, heavier notes. And yeah, that's kind of the Ardbeg experience. You're getting a lot of contrasting things that really work well together and are ultimately adding up into a whiskey that's become a Scotch whiskey classic. So as far as a score, for me personally, I was thinking that, just my preference is that this is kind of in that 6 out of 10 above average category, but it really highly depends on my particular mood, because when I'm in the mood, this is kind of hard to beat, at least in terms of an available, affordable, 46%, just high quality whiskey in general. So when it's really good, this is a 7 out of 10. Which is very good. And I think that's probably where most people who enjoy this type of whiskey would probably have this. I could definitely see that 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 range. And if you hate it, this is going to be down in the 3 because this is going to be a more divisive thing depending on whether you love peated whiskey or not. So yeah, I still enjoy this regardless. If this was just personally me and I was marking this down in my personal notebook or something, I'd give this a 6 out of 10. However, I'm going to lean more towards the high points, so I think I'm going to bump it up to that 7 out of 10 range. I'm going to score this at its peaks for me, because that's probably where it's going to be for other people who thoroughly enjoy this style. Okay, 7 out of 10, very good. Ardbeg 10, I could talk even more on this. Ardbeg and kind of the general vibe around Ardbeg and their committee releases and what the online community thinks. But apparently they don't think too badly about it, because if you're keeping up with our Kevin and I's Dram Face reactions, we will probably be recording numbers 11 through 20 coming up here not too shortly. And at number 11, in terms of the top whiskey distilleries on dramface.com, Ardbeg's coming in at number 11. So clearly there's still a lot of people out there that are loving what Ardbeg is doing. And if maybe that's based on the 10, the 5-year-old Wee Beastie, the Uigeadail, or maybe we're kind of overestimating the negative reactions that the committee releases have been getting. But that'll have to be for another video. We're going to try to keep this thing short and to the point. So thank you again for checking out another review here on Whiskey Uncorked. I thoroughly appreciate it. Please like, comment, subscribe. Any interaction is fantastic. I really do appreciate it. And until next time, cheers.